Anchorage, Alaska, February 1st, 2012. It is 10:15 at night, and the temperature outside is 4 degrees below zero. Common Grounds, a small roadside coffee kiosk on Tudor Road, is still open. The light inside spills out through a single service window into the frozen parking lot. An 18-year-old girl named Samantha Koenig is working the counter alone. She has told her boyfriend she will close up by 10:30. She has a test to study for. The evening has been slow. A surveillance camera mounted on a neighboring building records the scene in grainy black and white. At 10:17, a figure approaches the kiosk window from the left side of the frame. Male, medium build, dark clothing. He stands at the window for approximately 90 seconds. Then the footage becomes difficult to interpret. The figure appears to reach through the window. The light inside the kiosk goes out. The camera records 6 more minutes of nothing. An empty parking lot, a dark kiosk. The temperature dropping. Samantha Koenig does not come home that night. I am Miles' ghost hunter, and the story I am about to tell you is one of the most disturbing investigations in the history of American criminal profiling. Not because the details of the crime are uniquely horrific, although they are, but because the man responsible designed his entire life around one principle: never leave a pattern, never leave a connection, never let them build a profile. He succeeded for over a decade. He might have succeeded forever if he had not made one lazy mistake at a gas station in Texas. But I am getting ahead of myself. Before I can tell you who took Samantha Koenig, I need you to understand who she was. Because every investigation starts with the person who is missing, and every person who is missing was someone's entire world. Samantha Koenig was born on September 10, 1993. She grew up in Anchorage, the kind of Alaska girl who did not flinch at -30 winters. Her father, James Koenig, was a commercial fisherman. Her mother had left the family when Samantha was young, and Samantha carried that wound quietly, the way people carry things they have decided are not worth discussing. She was close to her father, protective of him. When James remarried, Samantha got along with her stepmother, but the bond with her dad was the anchor. By 18, Samantha was working at Common Grounds, a tiny drive-through coffee stand on Tudor Road in Anchorage. The job was simple. You showed up, you made lattes for commuters, you closed up. You went home. The pay was modest, the hours were flexible. Samantha liked it because it gave her time to figure out what she wanted. She had a boyfriend named Dwayne. They had been together for a while. Friends described them as solid, the kind of couple that finished each other's sentences and argued about what to watch on Netflix. Samantha talked about maybe going to college, maybe cosmetology school. She had not decided yet. She was 18. She had time. On the evening of February 1st, 2012, Samantha volunteered to close the kiosk alone. Dwayne offered to pick her up. She said no, she would be fine. It was a 10-minute drive home. She had done it dozens of times. The shift was dead. One customer in the last hour. She planned to lock the window at 10:30, clean up, and drive her old Chevrolet sedan back to the apartment she shared with Dwayne. At 10:15, she sent Dwayne a text. Almost done. Love you. At 10:17, the surveillance camera captured the figure at the window. At 10:34, Dwayne texted back, "On my way?" No response. At 10:41, Dwayne called. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He called again at 10:48. Same result. He drove to Common Grounds at 10:55. The kiosk was dark. Samantha's car was parked behind it. The driver's door was open. The engine was off. The keys were still in the ignition. Samantha's purse was on the passenger seat. Her phone was gone. Dwayne called the Anchorage Police Department at 11:02 p.m. The first officers arrived at Common Grounds at 11:20. They found the kiosk unlocked. The cash register was open, but the money was still inside. A half-finished drink sat on the counter. The service window latch was broken. Outside, in the packed snow of the parking lot, There were scuff marks near the rear of the kiosk, but the cold and foot traffic had already degraded them. No blood, no weapon, no note, no witness. The Anchorage Police Department classified the case as a missing persons investigation. Samantha Koenig, 18 years old, 5'4", brown hair, last seen wearing a dark hoodie and jeans at Common Grounds Coffee Kiosk, Tudor Road, Anchorage, Alaska, February 1st, 2012, 10:17 p.m. For the first 48 hours, the investigation followed standard protocol. Interview the boyfriend, interview the co-workers, interview the father, canvass the neighborhood, pull the surveillance footage, check the sex offender registry, run the phone records. Anchorage PD assigned a detective team and began working through the list. Dwayne cooperated fully. His phone records confirmed his location during the window of Samantha's disappearance. He was at their apartment. His texts to Samantha were consistent with his account. He passed a polygraph. Friends and family confirmed no history of violence, no arguments, no reason for concern. Dwayne was devastated and transparent. He was cleared within 72 hours. James Koenig, Samantha's father, flew back from a fishing trip the moment he heard. He became the public face of the search. He organized volunteer canvasses. He printed flyers. He went on local television and begged anyone with information to come forward. He offered a reward from his own savings, $10,000. The surveillance footage from the neighboring building was enhanced by the FBI's regional office. The figure at the window was male, approximately 5'11" to 6'1", wearing a dark jacket and what appeared to be a ski mask or balaclava. The resolution was too low for facial features. The camera angle showed the figure approaching from the east side of the parking lot, which meant he came from a direction with no other surveillance coverage. Whether this was luck or planning was impossible to determine from the footage alone. The first meaningful break came on February 2nd, the morning after Samantha's disappearance. Her debit card was used at an ATM in Anchorage. The withdrawal was $400, the maximum daily limit. The ATM camera captured an image of the person making the withdrawal, but the individual was wearing a hood and the face was not visible. What was visible was a hand holding a note up to the camera. The note contained a demand. More money would need to be deposited into Samantha's account, or she would not be returned. This changed the classification instantly. The Anchorage Police Department was now looking at a kidnapping with ransom demands. The FBI officially joined the investigation on February 3rd, 2012. A command post was established. James Koenig and Samantha's family were briefed. The instruction was clear: deposit money into Samantha's account and wait. The FBI would monitor ATM activity across the state. The assumption was that the kidnapper was local, probably someone who knew Samantha's routine, possibly a customer or someone from the area around Tudor Road. They were looking for a man with a connection to the victim. Then, the ATM pings started moving. February 4th, a withdrawal in Anchorage. February 8th, a withdrawal in Arizona. February 9th, another in New Mexico. February 12th, Texas. The kidnapper, or whoever was using Samantha's card, was driving south through the western United States at a pace that suggested interstate highway travel. The FBI tracked each withdrawal. Each ATM camera image showed the same hooded figure, same build, same deliberate avoidance of the lens. The card was being used at machines in gas stations and truck stops, always late at night, always in locations with minimal surveillance coverage. The FBI was now running a two-front investigation. Anchorage detectives were canvassing Tudor Road, reviewing customer logs from Common Grounds, and interviewing every regular. The federal team was tracking a ghost across 5 states. There was a theory forming in the Anchorage office. Someone suggested the kidnapper might be a long-haul trucker. The route matched interstate corridors. The timing matched someone who drove for a living. Agents began cross-referencing trucking company manifests with the ATM timeline. The list was enormous. thousands of trucks on those routes on any given week. Weeks of work produced nothing actionable. Meanwhile, on February 16th, the kidnapper sent a photograph to the Koenig family through Samantha's phone. The image showed Samantha sitting in what appeared to be a dim room. She was holding a copy of the Anchorage Daily News dated February 13th. Her eyes were open. She appeared to be alive. The message accompanying the photograph demanded an additional $30,000 be deposited into her account. James Koenig went on television again. He was shaking. He said he would pay anything. He said he just wanted his daughter back. The FBI image analysis team examined the photograph. They enhanced the background, looking for identifiable features, wall texture, furniture, light sources. The analysis would later reveal something that the investigators could not act on at the time, something I will return to, because it changes the meaning of everything that happened during those 2 weeks. Weeks passed. The ATM withdrawals continued, moving erratically across the southern United States. The FBI expanded its task force. They began looking at rental car records in the states where withdrawals had occurred. This was the second meaningful investigative thread. Not truckers, rental cars. Someone was renting vehicles with cash or prepaid cards in one city and returning them in another. But the data was massive. Hundreds of rental transactions per day across multiple states. Without a name, without a face, without a plate number, the agents were sorting through haystacks for a needle that might not even be there. 3 weeks in, the investigation had no suspect, no viable lead on the kidnapper's identity, and a victim whose photograph suggested she was still alive, somewhere in the country. The Anchorage police reviewed the Common Grounds customer list for the 4th time. They expanded the canvas to a half-mile radius. They interviewed over 300 people. They ran background checks on every known associate of the business. Nothing. No one matched the profile. No one had a motive. Samantha had no enemies, no debts, no involvement in anything that would attract this kind of attention. The obvious suspect, if there was one, would have been someone close. A boyfriend with a temper, an ex with a grudge, a co-worker with an obsession. But Dwayne was cleared. Samantha had no ex. Her co-workers were college students and single mothers. The investigation was circling. Then came the first real theory that seemed to fit. A registered offender living 6 blocks from Common Grounds had failed to check in with his parole officer on February 1st. His name was in the system. He had a prior conviction involving a young woman. His physical description roughly matched the figure on the surveillance camera. Anchorage detectives located him on February 22nd at a motel on the outskirts of the city. He had an alibi. He was in a hospital emergency room on the night of February 1st, from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a broken wrist. Medical records confirmed it. Staff confirmed it. He was there the entire window of Samantha's abduction. He had missed his parole check-in because he was embarrassed about the injury, which he sustained in a bar fight. The lead collapsed. The task force was back to zero. And then, on March 12, 2012, a police officer in Lufkin, Texas, pulled over a white Ford Focus for a routine traffic violation. The driver was a man in his early 30s, clean-shaven, calm. He presented a valid Washington state driver's license. The officer ran the plates. The car was a rental from prior. The driver's name was Israel Keys. The officer noticed that Keys seemed unusually cooperative, too cooperative. He consented to a search of the vehicle without hesitation. The officer found nothing in the cabin, but in the process, he noticed a debit card on the passenger seat that did not match the name on the driver's license. The name on the card was Samantha Koenig. Israel Keys was taken into custody in Lufkin, Texas, on March 12, 2012. Within 6 hours, the FBI was on a plane from Anchorage. The man who had been moving across America for 6 weeks, using a missing girl's bank card at gas station ATMs from Alaska to Texas, was not a trucker, not a drifter, not a transient. He was a 34-year-old general contractor from Anchorage, Alaska. He owned a small construction company called Pryor. He had an 11-year-old daughter. He coached her soccer team. His neighbors on Spur Lane in Anchorage described him as quiet, polite, a little reserved, but friendly enough. He mowed his lawn. He paid his bills. He attended community events. No criminal record, no history of violence, no red flags in any system. I need you to sit with that for a moment. Because the story I am about to tell you is not just about what Israel Keyes did to Samantha Koenig. It is about what he had been doing for over a decade across the entire country, and why nobody, not the FBI, not local police, not his family, not his neighbors, not a single human being on Earth had any idea. Israel Keyes was born on January 7, 1978, in Richmond, Utah. He was the second of 10 children in a family that moved frequently and lived in extreme isolation. His parents were adherents of a fundamentalist belief system that kept the children largely separated from mainstream society. The family relocated multiple times during Keyes' childhood, from Utah to Washington State to a remote homestead in Oregon. Keyes later told FBI agents that he had virtually no socialization outside his family until his mid-teens. By the time he was 14, the family had settled near Colville, Washington, a small town in the rural northeast corner of the state. Keyes attended high school sporadically. He was described by the few classmates who remembered him as extremely quiet, physically capable, and difficult to read. He did not form close friendships. He did not cause trouble. He simply existed at the margins. At 19, Keyes enlisted in the United States Army. He served from 1998 to 2001, stationed at Fort Lewis in Washington State, and later at Fort Hood in Texas. His service record was unremarkable. He achieved the rank of specialist. He received no disciplinary actions. He was trained in basic engineering and demolition. After his honorable discharge in 2001, he moved to Nia Bay, Washington, a remote community on the Makah Indian Reservation at the northwestern tip of the Olympic Peninsula. He worked construction. He was good at it. He started his own company. He moved to Anchorage around 2007. He had a daughter with a woman he was in a relationship with. The relationship ended, but Keyes maintained custody of the child. He built a life that looked, from the outside, like the life of a competent, self-sufficient, slightly introverted working-class single father. What the FBI would eventually learn, through months of interrogation after his arrest in Texas, is that Israel Keyes had been committing crimes across the United States for at least 11 years before Samantha Koenig walked into his field of vision. And what made him unlike any predator the Bureau had ever encountered was his methodology. Most offenders operate within a comfort zone. They target victims near their home or work. They develop a type, a preference for age, gender, appearance, vulnerability. They escalate in predictable patterns. They leave signatures. They make mistakes rooted in compulsion. Over time, law enforcement builds a profile based on geography, victimology, and behavioral consistency. That profile narrows the field. Israel Keyes had studied those patterns, not formally. He did not have a degree in criminology. But he was an obsessive consumer of true crime material, and he understood intuitively that every offender who got caught had done so because they left a pattern, a geographic cluster, a type of victim, a signature behavior, a digital footprint, a connection to the victim's social circle. Keyes decided he would leave none of those things. His system worked like this. He would identify a region of the country where he had no ties, no friends, no family, no work history. He would fly there, sometimes years before he planned to act. On these trips, he would drive to a remote location and bury a container. Inside the container, he would place a weapon, ammunition, cash, and materials for restraint and disposal. He called these containers his kits. The FBI would later call them murder caches. Then, he would fly home. He would go back to his construction business and his daughter's soccer games. Months would pass, sometimes years. When Keyes decided to act, he would turn off his cell phone. He would drive to the Anchorage airport and fly to a city hundreds or thousands of miles away. He would pay for the flight in cash. He would use a different identity for the rental car. He would drive to the location where he had buried the kit, dig it up, and arm himself. Then, he would find a target. There was no target selection in advance, no stalking, no surveillance of a specific person. Keyes told the FBI that he chose victims based on opportunity and isolation. He looked for people who were alone and in vulnerable settings. A house at the end of a dark road, a person walking alone at night, a business with a single employee closing up. He had no preferred age, no preferred gender, no preferred appearance. He wanted the absence of witnesses and the presence of opportunity. That was all. After the act, he would dispose of the evidence, often burying or burning it. He would clean himself. He would return the rental car. He would fly home. He would turn his phone back on. He would resume his normal life. His cell phone records, the primary tool of modern digital forensics, would show nothing. His phone was off during every relevant window. It was on during every irrelevant one. The FBI agents who interrogated Keyes after his arrest described the experience as unlike any previous subject interview. Special Agent Jolene Godin led the questioning. She would later tell investigators that Keyes was cooperative, articulate, and entirely in control of the conversations. He did not confess out of guilt or remorse. He negotiated. He offered information in exchange for specific conditions. He wanted his daughter shielded from media coverage. He wanted certain details of his crimes kept from public disclosure. He wanted control of the narrative, even while sitting in a federal detention facility. Keyes told the agents about 2 specific cases in addition to Samantha Koenig. The first involved a married couple in Essex Junction, Vermont. Their names were William Currier and Lorraine Currier. Bill was 50 years old and Lorraine was 55. They lived in a modest house on a quiet street. Bill worked at a farm. Lorraine worked at a senior center. Their neighbors described them as friendly and private. They had no enemies. They had no connection to Alaska, to construction work, to the military, or to anyone named Israel Keyes. On the night of June 8, 2011, the Curriers went to bed in their home on Silver Street in Essex Junction. At some point during the night, a man entered the house through a window. He had flown from Anchorage to Chicago 2 days earlier. He had rented a car and driven east. He had retrieved a cache he had buried near a lake in Vermont more than 2 years prior. Inside the cache was a weapon and tools. The Curriers were taken from their home. Their bodies were never recovered. Bill Currier's truck was found abandoned at a trailhead. Forensic evidence in the abandoned farmhouse where Keyes told agents he had taken them confirmed the presence of both victims. The property was scheduled for demolition, and Keyes had known this. He selected the location because he knew the evidence would be destroyed by construction crews. Lorraine Currier's family spent months believing she had simply walked away from her life. Bill's co-workers searched the woods near the trailhead for weeks. The case was classified as a missing persons investigation. No suspect was ever identified. The connection to Israel Keyes was not established until he described the crime to FBI agents in Anchorage 9 months after his arrest for the Koenig abduction. Keyes also provided partial information about additional victims. He described locations. He described time frames. He described methods. But he withheld names. He withheld specifics. He gave the FBI enough to know that the scope of his activity was far greater than 2 confirmed cases, but not enough to identify most of the victims or recover their remains. The FBI compiled a list. Based on Keyes' own statements, on cell phone data from the periods when his phone was on flight records, on rental car records, and on unsolved cases in the geographic areas Keyes described, The Bureau identified at least 11 suspected victims across multiple states over a period of approximately 11 years. Some of these individuals were reported missing. Others may never have been reported. In several cases, no matching missing person could be identified in the relevant area during the relevant time frame. 11 suspected victims, 3 confirmed, 8 unknown, and a man who was willing to discuss them only on his own terms. Now I need to tell you what Israel Keyes actually did to Samantha Koenig, because the story you have heard so far, the abduction from the coffee kiosk, the ransom demands, the photograph, the cross-country flight, is the version that played out in public during those 6 weeks in February and March of 2012. It is the version that Samantha's father saw, the version the FBI chased, the version the news cameras covered. The real version is worse. On the night of February 1st, Keyes drove to Common Grounds on Tudor Road. He had been watching the kiosk for several days, not Samantha specifically, the kiosk. He was watching for the moment when a single employee would be closing alone. He had no idea who Samantha Koenig was. He did not know her name, her age, her family, or anything about her. She was simply the person who happened to be alone behind the counter when the conditions were right. Keyes approached the service window. He ordered a coffee. As Samantha turned to make the drink, he reached through the window and displayed a weapon. He told her to come outside. She did. He walked her to his white pickup truck, which was parked at the far end of the lot, away from the camera's primary field of view. He placed her in the vehicle and drove to a shed on the property of his construction business. Samantha Koenig was alive when she entered that shed. She remained alive for a period of time that Keyes described in his interrogations, but that I will not detail here, because those details serve no purpose beyond their own horror. What I will tell you is this. When the FBI agents in the interrogation room heard Keyes describe the timeline, the sequence of events in that shed over the following hours, more than one agent had to leave the room. Then Keyes left the shed. He went home. He ate dinner. He checked on his daughter. He went to sleep. On February 2nd, Keyes returned to the shed. Samantha Koenig was no longer alive. Keyes had already begun the next phase of his plan. He needed the ransom to look credible. A missing person whose bank card is being used suggests the person might still be alive. A family that believes their daughter is alive will pay. A family that knows she is gone will stop paying, and the police will escalate to a homicide investigation. Keyes had prepared for this. He took Samantha's body. He positioned her in a way that she appeared to be sitting upright. He applied makeup to her face. He sewed her eyes open. Then he held up a copy of the Anchorage Daily News, dated February 13th, next to her face, and took a photograph. The photograph that was sent to the Koenig family. The photograph that James Koenig held in his hands and showed to the television cameras, begging the public for help, saying his daughter was still alive. She was not alive when that photograph was taken. She had not been alive for nearly 2 weeks. The date on the newspaper was the only living thing in the frame. That was the detail the FBI image analysis team would later identify. The post-mortem staging. The thread visible at the corners of the eyes. The makeup applied to conceal the absence of circulation. The rigidity of the posture that no living person would hold naturally. But by the time the analysis was complete, they already had Keyes in custody. The photograph became evidence, not intelligence. After taking the photograph and sending the ransom demand, Keyes disposed of Samantha's remains. He drove to Matanuska Lake, a frozen body of water north of Anchorage. He cut a hole in the ice. He placed her body in the water and let the ice refreeze over the opening. Her remains were recovered by dive teams on April 2nd, 2012, after Keyes provided the location during interrogation. Then Keyes flew south. He began the road trip that the FBI tracked through ATM, withdrawals from Alaska to Texas. He used Samantha's card because it served 2 purposes. It maintained the illusion that she was alive and traveling, drawing the investigation away from Anchorage, and it gave him spending money. He rented the white Ford Focus. He drove through Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. He was relaxed. He was careful. He used the card at machines he knew would have cameras, but he wore hoods and averted his face. He was not panicking. He was executing a plan. The plan failed on March 12th in Lufkin, Texas, because Israel Keyes got lazy. He used Samantha's debit card at a gas station where a police cruiser happened to be parked. The officer noticed the white Ford Focus because it matched a general description from an FBI alert that had been circulated 2 days earlier to law enforcement across the southern states. The alert described a vehicle possibly associated with the use of a kidnapping victim's bank card. White sedan, rental plates, male driver. The officer followed the Focus for 6 minutes before initiating the traffic stop. Keyes pulled over immediately. He did not run. He did not resist. He handed over his license and registration with steady hands. He smiled at the officer and asked if there was a problem. And on the passenger seat, in plain view, was a debit card bearing the name Samantha Koenig. That was it. That was the mistake. Not a forensic breakthrough, not a witness coming forward, not a psychological profile narrowing the field. A debit card on a car seat and a cop with good eyes. When the FBI arrived in Lufkin and took custody of Israel Keyes, they expected a standard interrogation, a suspect denying involvement, requesting a lawyer, shutting down. That is not what happened. Keyes waived his right to an attorney. He sat down across from Special Agent Jolene Godin and her team, and he began to talk. Not because he felt guilty, not because he wanted absolution, because he wanted to make a deal. Keyes told the agents he would provide information about Samantha Koenig and about other crimes he had committed in exchange for 3 conditions. First, his daughter would not be named in any media coverage. Second, the details of certain crimes would not be made public during his lifetime. Third, the federal government would seek the death penalty rather than life imprisonment. He wanted to die. He did not want to grow old in a cell. He wanted a clean execution, and he wanted his daughter to grow up without his name attached to a public spectacle. The FBI agreed to negotiate, and over the course of the following months, in a series of recorded interrogation sessions totaling more than 40 hours, Israel Keyes described his activities with the calm, detailed precision of a man reviewing a construction project. He told them about the murder caches. He drew maps. He described locations in Washington State, Wyoming, New York, Vermont, and other states where he had buried kits years before using them. Some of these caches were recovered by FBI teams. Others were not found. Keyes believed some had been disturbed by animals or weather. Others he could not locate precisely because too much time had passed. He told them about the couriers. He described the layout of their house. He described the abandoned farmhouse where he took them. He described what he did. He described how he disposed of the evidence. The FBI confirmed the details against the existing missing persons file and against forensic evidence recovered from the farmhouse site. He told them about other victims. But here is where Keyes maintained his control. He would describe a region. He would describe a time frame. He would describe a method. But he would not give names. He would say things like, there was someone in Washington State between 2001 and 2003, or there was a situation in the Northeast in 2009. He used the word situation. He used the word events. He did not use the word murder. The agents pushed. They showed him missing persons reports. They showed him photographs. They asked direct questions. Keyes would sometimes nod. Sometimes he would smile. Sometimes he would say, I am not going to talk about that one today. The sessions had the quality of a chess game in which one player controlled the board and the clock. FBI analysts worked around the clock to correlate Keyes's vague disclosures with known unsolved cases. They mapped his travel patterns using airline records, rental car agreements, and the gaps in his cell phone activity. Every period when Keys's phone went dark, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, corresponded to a potential window of activity. The analysts identified at least 11 such windows, spanning from 2001 to 2012. In some of those windows, missing persons cases existed in the geographic areas Keys described. In others, no matching case could be found. This raised a possibility that the agents discussed privately, but rarely stated publicly. Some of Keys's victims may have been people whose disappearances were never reported. Transients, isolated individuals, people without family networks to raise alarms, people who simply vanished and were never counted. The FBI's official position, maintained to this day, is that Israel Keys is believed to be responsible for an unknown number of homicides across multiple states over a period of approximately 11 years. The confirmed count is 3: Samantha Koenig, William Currier, Lorraine Currier. The suspected count is at least 11. The actual count is unknown and may never be determined. And then Israel Keys ended the conversation. On December 2, 2012, 9 months after his arrest, Israel Keys was found dead in his cell at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. He had fashioned a cutting instrument from a razor blade. He severed his own wrists. He also wrapped a ligature around his neck. He was found by guards during a routine check. Attempts at resuscitation failed. He left a note. The contents were described by investigators as a long, rambling document that included what appeared to be verse. The note did not contain confessions. It did not name victims. It did not provide locations. It was, by the accounts of those who read it, the final act of a man who wanted control over everything, including the ending. The FBI's investigation into Israel Keys continues to this day as an open case. The Bureau maintains a page on its website dedicated to the case, requesting public assistance in identifying Keys's movements and potential victims. The murder caches that were never recovered remain buried somewhere in the American landscape. The families of the 8 or more unidentified victims remain without answers, without remains, without closure. Samantha Koenig's father, James Koenig, continued to live in Anchorage after his daughter's murder. He gave interviews in the years that followed. In one, he described the moment he learned the truth about the ransom photograph. The photograph he had held in his hands, the photograph he had shown on television, the photograph of his daughter that he believed proved she was alive. When he learned that Samantha had been dead for nearly 2 weeks when that picture was taken, that her eyes had been sewn open, that makeup had been applied to simulate life, James Koenig said he felt something leave his body that never came back. He did not describe what that something was. He did not need to. I told you at the beginning of this video that this case would disturb you not because of the graphic nature of the crimes, although they are graphic, but because of the methodology, the architecture of invisibility that Israel Keys built around himself. Think about what he did. He studied how law enforcement catches predators, and he reverse-engineered a life that would be invisible to every tool they had. No geographic pattern, no victim type, no digital footprint during operational windows, no connection to victims, no signature behavior, no escalation curve, no trophies kept at home, no confiding in accomplices, no online activity, nothing. He was a ghost, not because he was supernatural, because he was disciplined, because he treated it like a trade, the way he treated construction. Measure twice. Cut once, bury the kit, wait, fly out, phone off, rental car, cash, execute, clean, fly home, phone on, soccer practice. The FBI has acknowledged that Israel Keys represents a category of offender that their existing profiling methodology was not designed to detect. A predator without a pattern is, by definition, invisible to pattern-based detection systems. Keys did not break the mold. He studied the mold and built himself to be its negative space. And here is the part that should keep you awake tonight. The FBI does not know how many Israel keys are out there. Their profiling system, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, the behavioral analysis units, all of it is built on the assumption that offenders leave patterns. That assumption works for 95% of cases. It is the other 5% that disappear into the noise. Israel Keys was caught because he used a dead girl's debit card at a gas station where a cop happened to be parked. That is not detective work. That is not profiling. That is luck. And luck is not a system. Samantha Koenig was 18 years old. She liked coffee and her boyfriend, and the idea of maybe going to cosmetology school. She volunteered for the late shift because she wanted to help out. She sent her last text message at 10:15 p.m. on February 1st, 2012. Almost done. Love you. She did not know that the shadow approaching her window had been planning this moment for years. She did not know that the weapons had been buried before she ever made her first latte at that kiosk. She did not know that her photograph would be staged after her death to extract money from her father. She did not know any of it. She was just closing up. She was just going home. Israel Keys took her. He took the couriers. He took others whose names we do not know and may never know. And then he took himself, in a jail cell in Anchorage, with a razor blade and a piece of cloth, leaving behind a note that explained nothing and a list of questions that no one alive can answer. The ground still holds his weapons. The files remain open. The families remain waiting. And in the next episode of Miles' Ghost Hunter, we enter the final case of this season. Episode 20, The Final Mask. A man who lived 3 separate lives in 3 separate cities, with 3 separate families, and none of them knew about the others, until someone opened a storage unit in New Jersey and found what was inside. Subscribe now, because that one is going to shatter everything you think you know about the person sleeping next to you. I am Miles' Ghost Hunter, and the dead do not rest. They wait.